Alright, hello everybody. This is Darby Miller with the Hellfire Remote Viewing Club, and this is going to be a video that's going to go over our data and viewer sessions for one of our most recent projects entitled Remote Viewing: The Cause of the Younger Dryas. I'm going to speak here for about 7 minutes or so, going over the target, why I chose the target, and then I'll discuss some of the main themes that came up in our viewers' data. And then after I do that, you're going to be able to watch, I believe we have 7 remote viewers for this project presenting their data and some recorded video presentations. So what is the Younger Dryas? The Younger Dryas is a cooling period on Earth that occurred between 12,900 to 11,600 years ago. During this cooling period, parts of Europe and North America returned to Ice Age conditions in less than 100 years. After this 1,300-year cooling period ended, a period of rapid warming followed. The Younger Dryas is named after a pale yellow wildflower of the rose family that is found in cold climates, and fossil records indicate that it was growing in areas that had returned to cold conditions during this period of climatic change. So what caused the Younger Dryas? Well, there isn't a clear consensus about its cause, which is one of the things that prompted this remote viewing project. But the leading theory is that a lot of fresh water was discharged into the North Atlantic from glacial lakes, and this sudden discharge of water disrupted the thermohaline circulation, which is known as the Great Ocean Conveyor Belt. And this disruption of this conveyor belt and the ocean caused dramatic climate change. There are other theories as well, such as volcanic eruptions, something called negative radiative forcing, which is basically means that less radiation from space reached the surface of the Earth, thus cooling it. A comet impact is another theory, and changes in ice cap shape or extended period of sunspot activity are some other theories as well. So why did I choose the Younger Dryas as a target for our remote viewers? Well, I was watching Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse Netflix TV series, and in this series he explores archaeological sites throughout the world that may provide evidence of an advanced civilization that was destroyed by a cataclysm during the time frame of the Younger Dryas. Graham puts forth the theory that survivors of this destroyed civilization may have been involved in constructing the structures at these archaeological sites, and also passing on knowledge such as sophisticated construction techniques, astronomy, and agriculture. Graham Hancock suggests that these archaeological remnants could be evidence of the legendary civilization of Atlantis, as described by Plato, supposedly from the reports of Solon, who was said to have translated Egyptian records of Atlantis. I wondered if our remote viewers could help to solve the mystery of what caused this extreme and sudden period of climatic change on Earth that is clearly recorded in the geological record, as well as in the mythologies of many ancient cultures. So I decided to task our 8 remote viewers on this target. The target ID was 7457-8851. This is the only information these remote viewers had about the target. They were completely blind to the target and the tasking statement. The tasking statement read, "The remote viewer will describe the primary cause or causes of the period of climatic change on Earth, commonly known as the Younger Dryas, which occurred around 12,900 to 11,700 BP, which stands for before present timescale." For this project, our remote viewers were Anita, Coral, Daz, Dennis, Don, Dimi, Henny, and Naeem. So before we present the recorded video presentations from our remote viewers of their data, I want to share with you the main themes that I found in the session data in regards to the cause of the Younger Dryas. So I'm going to briefly read a series of themes and show you some photos of session data, and then we'll get into the recorded video presentations. In order to make it to this list of primary themes, I needed to find similar themes in at least 2 different remote viewers' data. So if, in exploring the sessions of our remote viewers, if at least 2 of them had a particular theme, it made it on this list. So one of the themes that came up in our data was a destructive impact, and you can see screenshots below from several of our viewers. Our viewers will be getting into these pages of data and others in the recorded video presentations, so don't worry about making out all the details right now. You're going to get a chance to get into all of that very shortly. Another theme that was found in the data I am categorizing as energetics in motion. Next, we have the sudden destruction of a civilization. Here we have the theme survivors fled underground. Another theme I saw in our data was non-human life forms interfering. Here we have earthquake-like activity. Next, we have a man-made rotating object. Here we have an oblong man-made object. Our next theme is structures with hybrid animal forms. Something rising up. We had a theme of magician or priest-like life forms in our data. Here is data showing a floating structure and or floating land. Here's some interesting data of life forms holding wand or scepter-like objects. And the final theme that I found was an object with green energetics. So obviously that's a very brief overview of what I consider to be the main themes that came out of our remote viewers data. But now you're going to get an opportunity to watch recorded video presentations from 7 of our remote viewers on their data. They're going to present the highlights of their data and discuss what they think their data says about what caused the Younger Dryas. After you've completed the video, please leave any comments or questions or thoughts you have in the comment field below this video, wherever you're watching it. And we hope to have a follow-up video where we all get together and discuss this project and answer some of your questions and respond to some of your comments. So we look forward to hearing from you. But for now, let's go ahead and switch over to the recorded video presentations, and I hope you enjoy them.
Hi there, my name is Das Smith, and today I'm going to go through a target that I did recently for the Hellfire group. The target number I used on this was 74578851. I did several remote viewings. This was the target, the primary cause of the Younger Dryas, essentially the climatic change that happened on Earth around about 12,000 years ago. I think the targeteer wanted to know what caused this and what happened. So here's my blind remote viewing. So everything was done blind and I just used the number. And on this, I first started off here with an energetic release. Lots of movement and energy here. And right off the bat, I felt that this was explosive. This felt like it was beamed, it was ray-like, and it was in motion. It was almost like a laser type action, I felt. And I had the AOL here of starlight, because that's what it felt like. It felt like, light in space being beamed. Here's my description of this on the next page. So here's a nice sketch that I did here. Felt like there's this explosion here going out, radiating out in every direction. but I also had these small microscopic particles, and this felt like it was light energy that was being beamed and spread from a central point or location. It felt fast and it felt dense. I felt like there were, these little objects were actually moving within this light field. And this felt very much like exotic energy or dark matter. So I tried to look at this in a bit more detail. Here's one of the light rays here, and I felt that there were round, spherical, circular forms within this. They were fast moving, but they felt part of something large here. They felt, physical. They felt grey, silver, white, fluid, rippling, and they also felt microscopic. I didn't know really if I was looking at a microscopic target or one with a lot more scale on this. Within remote viewing, that happens. There was definitely the light source itself, or the energy source, was energy, and it had a signature, and it felt like it was moving in a wave. So another quick ideogram here with two parts to it, an A and a B. A felt like it was electrostatic, moving, fizzling energy, crisp, noisy. It had a Tesla feel about it. And then B felt like there was a life, felt like there was a male life involved in the past, very spiritually endowed, underlined there, so it felt very kind of important to me, very magician-like, very esoteric. Moving to a strange ideogram here, it felt like there was a structure which changes movement, and the movement is feeling like it's moving downwards in an erratic movement. It felt like this was an event in the past, and it was an event in space. Here's me trying to draw this in a bit more detail here. So here's the movement here. It felt like there was two different forms of motion. This circular motion at first, and then it changed motion. So number one, it felt circular and repeated, looped downwards and driven. So it felt like it was intentional. And then there was an outwards movement here, which was explosive, chaotic, and far-reaching. Here's me trying to describe the movement here. So the movement was downwards in motion. So there was a movement of energy, and it was along a path, and then it changed. And I think the change was the explosion. Here's some sensory data here. So this is just like sounds, textures, temperatures, colors, luminescence, contrast. Some taste there, some smells, some spiritual stuffs here, and then some dimensional stuff here, which, all led me to a conclusion here. This felt very kind of sciencey, and it had a portal feel and also a bomb feel to it as well, like an explosive feel. Here's a stage 3 sketch here, and I'm showing something on a long journey here. It feels like it's on a flight path. The flight path feels circular. It's a long progression or movement, and it's, in dark, deep, and I felt that this was both in space and in time. So a big journey, a long journey, or a flight path in space and time. And here it is again in a bit more detail. Felt very circular, repeated mathematical patterns, or geometric. This whole target had a strong physics feel to it, quantum type feeling, like advanced physics. Patterns, waves, particles, and light. And I felt like I was being pulled between different things within the target. Because, I was seeing this light, but I was also seeing this grey spherical object that was within the beam of light. And it felt like accelerated particles. So I'm moving in front of the target here. I see a big blowout, a release or transference of energy, and this is an explosive feel. And this exploded outwards from a core. And I could see that there was this kind of explosive event that was happening in this explosion. I don't know what this means, but it looked like a chain or a series of connected energy releases. Very interesting, and that maybe at a quantum or a very small level on that one. So on the end of this one, I'm getting to the end of this first session now. I had a real sense of subtle parts. Some parts were very small, so, like layers in the fabric of reality, space-time kind of feel. There was a manipulation of dimensions of space and time, folds of space. There was a big energy release. There was a manipulation of movement. But everything felt so small, and at some point it felt tight and compact, like in a vacuum. And time felt like it was distorted. So I asked to get advice from this point. This is my last page here. And again, on my last page, just another ideogram here showing lots of energy, motion. It feels like it comes down from somewhere, and then there's a big motion. And I wrote here, energy is the key. So I was then retasked to look at the source of the downward moving energy and the destination and the effect. And I had a high rushing speed, a forwards pushing momentum, a forwards trajectory, and I underlined trajectory here, and it was loud. I felt like there was an engine noise to this. Here's the motion itself, felt wild, energetic, kinesthetic, powerful, and it felt like a big energy release. And it felt like this was being beamed, a bit like a laser. Here's me with the energy thing here, a build-up of a release of generated power, and it felt very wave-like, like pulsating light energy. It felt modulated like plasma. So this feels like advanced physics. There's a vibration and a deep hum associated to this. It feels like light, but it's more than light. It's super dense, super packed energy to it. And I had an AOL here of a maser. Something about ions to this, like an ion engine or something. So yeah, it felt very much like Star Wars that I was looking at here. So this had an horizontal movement, and here's me trying to describe it here. It feels projected or shot or dispersed, almost weapon-like, so almost like a beam of light, like a laser or a maser weapon. And here I'm trying to draw it here with the layers to it, with the ions or whatever is in there, and the waves as well. So it felt like energy that was split into spectrums, a bit like a hologram. And there was this downwards kind of guided path to this, and at the end of it there was a grey gunmetal curved shell linear object thing here, and I got like things like AOL of a cigar ship or a fuselage. So it felt like there was a man-made metallic object at the end of this with a science feel. And here I'm trying to draw it again here. You know, it felt kind of elongated, kind of like cigar-shaped in this view of it. Sometimes it felt like circular, sometimes it felt cigar-shaped. Maybe I was looking at it end on or something, to get the circular thing. I do not know. But it felt like a large, man-made, designed, exotic type craft, I would say. Cylindrical or barrel kind of feeling to it, hollow, curved. And it felt like it had a specific energy signature. At the end of it, it felt like hard metallic, solid, with overlapping connected parts, looked like fan blades or something. And it felt like an exhaust or energy distribution port. And here's my visual of, the energy that was kind of being dispelled from this. Again, some more sensory stuff here, so, sounds, textures, temperatures, visuals, then some taste, smells, and so on for all this here. So that's just sensory information there that I was picking up using all my senses. Moving on here to a visual. So here's a visual here of some kind of structured object with a wide spectrum of moving bands of energy. Feels released or emitted or beamed from the ends of a man-made object. So I feel like this is an object that's kind of almost like pushing out an energy, maybe like a laser, maser kind of weapon, but everything's man-made in exotic advanced science. So it feels like energy that can interact with life, almost like scan it in some way. Very, very esoteric, very advanced. So the energy itself felt scan-like and filtered light, waves that pulsed and they had a high amplitude. They transferred information and it felt very holographic. And this felt like energy emitted from a device or object. Very complex, and it had multiple forms, and I had the AOL here of radionics. I don't know what that means. It's definitely worth me looking into. So a bit of free-form information on the end here. I had words like articulated, blown out and ejected, subatomic waves and frequencies, and it felt ghost-like because, it's non-physical, and had these very strange kind of vibrational pattern to it. So that was the end of that session, and then I was retasked with more to explore. Can I sketch and describe the destination of the downward moving energy and spherical objects? So I did this session next, and here's an ideogram showing a downward sharp angled movement over a great distance. Another ideogram here showing movement. But I also picked up land, which was layered, natural, tall, and it had mountains, it had plains, very remote, very natural. So here's the land here. And there's this kind of trajectory path that made more than one course correction of an object that went down to a surface. So I went into detail on this, and I could see that there were at least 3 or more stages of planned direction changes. This was tracked, monitored, and maneuvered. It was driven and guided. It felt almost like a drone because it was remote. It didn't feel like there was anyone inside of it. Felt aerial, above ground, and it was moving to ground level eventually. And it felt like it was doing some kind of recon or something like that. So the effect of the energy here, I was trying to get for the tasker. So here's my downwards motion, and then it hits and explodes outwards with impact waves. The impact waves were heat, energy, and noise. Very destructive to this. So it pushed and it leveled all the vegetation, as it was very damaging to the vegetation in the area. The downwards motion here was its speed. It was an angled drop. There felt like there was smoke or cloud displacement through the air. It was a propelled vehicle-like object that was small, but it felt controlled, and it felt spherical metallic object, almost like one of the early nuclear bombs that I've seen. I think it was dropped in Japan or something. Again, another sketch of it here, come down at an angle. It made a crater here, and you can see the side view there of me trying to show the crater with massive waves going outwards. And, it made me feel of like the Tunguska kind of event, because it had that kind of feeling about it. So there were sound-like waves that were pressure, wind. It was warm and hot circular, and it affected the environment, made a crater or depression, like a scoop mark. And there was lots of radiation and gamma waves or gamma radiation to it. So that's the end of that RV. They asked me to do one more, which was sketch and describe the source of the downwards motion energy, what its origin. So they wanted to know where it came from. So here's my typed up summary for this. We should always do a typed up summary for every RV, but I don't, I'm afraid. So I did on this one though. But the actual data itself, trying to follow it back. So I felt like it came over a long distance and then it exploded. And I had this flash visual of a downwards trajectory of an object here moving through space, moving towards a planet there. The object itself felt satellite-like. Feels like it was high above, and it was scanning as it was moving with sound waves downwards towards the surface. And I felt like at some point it might have moved on an elliptical axis. So I wrote Y elliptical, and then something about the word Overwatch. So something about the planet here, and then moving around it. So maybe it was some kind of tracking device or satellite. I don't know that it came down to the planet. I do not know. They felt like there was a quantum communication going on, transfer of data and information. But this didn't feel like it was in this dimension. It felt like it was out of phase with this dimension. So it felt quantum. So I followed the object back to its source origin. And here's the planet. And I felt it came over a vast distance. So there's the object there on almost like me doing back engineering on a reverse journey. So it felt like it came from a vast distance away in time and space. And that gave me an AOL then of Mars as a way station. And I had this flash visual of 3 huge objects here. So then I expanded that out. And I felt like there was a planet with these 3 huge objects. I would have to say craft-like cigar-shaped objects that were in the vicinity of the planet. And the planet had at least 2 moons. So there's a large, smooth-looking, cold, distant, heavy, warmer than the Earth, probably 3 times warmer or something planet. There are 3 or more varying sizes, linear, smooth, grey reflective structures, and they're close by the planet, and they're protected by the space in the planet itself. They're almost like in the shadow of the planet. They've been there a long time, and it has a kind of temporary station feel to it. So I moved back even further here from that planet to the origin of where these craft came from. And again, it was a vast, huge distance. So B here is the current location. B is where they came from. And it felt like a large swirling mass of gases that were vast. And they looked like a flower, moving flower, colourful, moving, so dense and thick with hot kind of motion and energy. It looked like this kind of thing, but colourful. And it felt like they came on a huge journey. And I'm trying to move here backwards again. And I feel like the final destination for this was 3 planets or stars. The planets or stars are very close by. They're super white and bright and dense. Super cold feeling to this. And it feels like there was almost like something about they were behind these 3 planets or something. But that's the final destination with these 3 close planets or stars. The origin feels interstellar originally, what have I got here? Now it felt like there was a land mass water interface, very island like. I don't know what all this is about, to be honest. I'm trying to describe the final destination of where all this came from. Yeah, you can see it there. Felt very warm, almost like a land coastal kind of thing on an island or lake, actually on one of these planets or stars. So that's the data. What do I think about this? I think it's very interesting. What it feels like to me, if I go back to the origin of the target here, which was climatic changes on Earth, known as the Younger Dryas, around about 12,900 years ago. I would say from my data, an interstellar man-made structured object that came from a vast distance away on several legs of travel, one of them being Mars, ended up coming to Earth and either intentionally or accidentally hit the surface, causing catastrophic effects. As I said, the whole device, the whole thing felt very beamed, very kind of what's the word? Very very esoteric and very advanced in its technology. Felt very kind of holographic. Yeah, really like dark matter, kind of like quantum entanglements. Very advanced, I would say. But yeah, huge, massive explosion with all this like dark matter and matter doing things. Yeah, so I would have to say that the climatic change on Earth, based on my data alone, without seeing the other remote viewers' data, would indicate some kind of accidental or interaction with an advanced technology that either intentionally or accidentally caused these changes to occur. That's my remote viewing. I hope you like this. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the remote viewing on this project. Take care.
Hello, I'm Dimi, and I'm a member of Hellfire Remote Viewing Club founded by Dan Smith. We explore the uncharted depths of mysteries to unearth secrets and unveil information that is otherwise elusive. Today I'm going to have a presentation on the target 7457-8851, the primary cause of the Younger Dryas. The tasker was Darby. As from the circumstances and location, from my first impression, I've got the main gestalt as land, energy, life structure. It felt old, ancient. I have an analytic overlay of broken, damages, shelter. As to type of perception as natural environment through mountains like solid structure, then a man-made going down slowly being a cloudy formation which was black rotating above. And then also drawings. On first draw, which was a view above over the area, I've seen hilly structure with solid structure which were inactive, a dusty, deserted, desolated location with natural environment in a steep area with a heavy dust atmosphere which was concentrated. And here was also a man-made type which was flying over, probing around, exploring surroundings, which remind me of the ingenuity from Mars. The atmosphere felt heavy, concentrated, hard breathing. Moving further, I've seen also structure underground, maze type, labyrinth type, which were very complex, were protected in a protected zone and were sealed. A sense of multiple understructure which were used to shelter life in hard times. The under tunnels and spaces which communicates in vast areas around, and they are built for purpose of protection. Also, I've seen decoration type in the top of the structure, and the structure was empty, desolate. In a nighttime um, time in a night time, or uh, I think the atmosphere felt really dark, and I felt compelled to draw these um, sketches about the life here. Life was abundant, lot of life, but it was a sense of havoc, of running for life, of despair. Here in the middle, where I was drawing this obelisk type structure, which I think it was more like a symbol for me in a way. Um, I've seen people running to save their lives all over, a sense of despair, a fear, and I've seen like it was poof, the life was gone in a split second, like a magic did. The structure used to be active, full of life, and at some point everything vanished sudden. The life, the ambience felt exotic, as from another world, from stories or movies, from exotic location, but was suddenly a loss of life, and all vanished. And I've seen ghost towns. Some went down under the structure in the labyrinth type, some was left behind above and vanished, pulverized into dust. I saw also this figure, shaman figure type, like a priest, which was preaching to those lives. It was like a future seeker or something, a fortune teller. I don't know. There was a sense of what I've had there. I felt compelled to draw this image of a life before and after the energy. The energy is represented here um, like like a feather, let's say, but it was not like a feather. The life before and after. The life after was made dust, pulverized, vanished, and also in the right image. Before and after, again I felt compelled. In the right was my sessions from the whiteboard. Um, Here you see in the left the structure full of life, and after the energetics was empty, and the life was turning to dust, was burned, sudden, disintegrated, and the energetics coming from up was moving all directions. And also, this structure and location was active a long time ago, and the life there vanished sudden, as I said, from an outside force. The life above was transformed into dust through a process of pulverization coming from above. A small number shelter in the structure under the land. And I've seen these shards floating in the air, red, fiery, falling down, burned, a sense of post apocalyptic, an eerie silence after all, dust burning, a sense of war seen there. An energy which felt like a motion and vibration land of crackling and powerful and rumbling sounds, shaken like an earthquake with huge ripples, type of motion. And again, structure under this force, which in the left sketch, which was coming from up, a directed force, which felt really destructive, and also here like a swirling type and directed energy. This energy in the life in the right sketch felt really intelligent, really cold, clever, dis- destructive tool, precise, um, and it felt like a power of a star in that position. Let's move further. And at that moment, I've got my first task. Please sketch and describe the outside force that caused the light to vanish suddenly or shelter within the ground. And my first impression was land, motion, land, energy, structure, life. The land was shaking, trembling, cracking. I've seen swallowing land, rumbling, pitch noise, huge concentrated energy, life as foliage, humanoids, and was vanished, sudden turn to dust. The energetics was coming from these man-made in the left sketch, which has a ringy parts on the top and a stick leg on the down part, and it felt it was maneuver. Therefore, I draw that kind of hands attaching to that. The energetics were directed with a rumbling, shaking, crackling noise and land after the energetics were acting. It was maneuvered by someone. It feels like an entire urban area. It's swallowed um, by a land nearby. In the middle, I've seen falling down parts of the hilly part or mountains like gestalts from around shaking land. Um, I felt the energetic was directed, was also sound related, but it was invisible, um, and can be spread or directed specific or in all direction. I felt like I've heard a high pitched noise. I've seen blasting. I was angry and petrified. I felt a sense of plutonium and uranium coming from the green sense of man made, which told me I've already learned from my session that when I'm seeing something green on a man made and I've seen like an exotic materials, it felt like radiation to me. So that thing was like a micronuclear power plant that can be used for different purposes. This ringy stuff here, which was really, really odd. And then the energy again transformed everything from a thing to nothing. I felt compelled to write this. I felt also there is a relationship with ultrasounds, with microwaves, with high frequency, with low amplitude. It, it felt again invisible. There is a feel of moving down deep or falling inside deep of structures. The area is desolated, empty. The life is no longer here. Okay, let's move further. And behind the energy, I've seen this figure, which was like an AI robot to me because it was really um, cold, emotionless, powerful, knowledgeable. Um, what else was driven only by its mission and its goals. It was a methodical type of being. I've seen near man-made, which were felt rectangular, grilled or type, or um, it was tapping really quick, like when you are typing on computer. This type of movements I've seen, um, and it was like a creation or something. It looked like in the high-speed motion, really, really odd sensation. Also, I felt the words of civilization, empires, races, interstellar, advanced wars, bloodlines, intrigue, supremacy, surviving, complex, special powers, abilities, heroes, gods, and eons of time, geniuses, master and servant. The figure of this life, I think, is symbolic, more like symbolic. It was an angry being, a conqueror, a destroyer, nervous person, which was having in his hand a tool, spreading a concentrated energy everywhere. Um, for me, it was like Zeus from the myths of Greeks. When I was looking to the purpose, I think I've seen they are here to clean out the area. There's a sense of wiping everything out and no trace left behind. They are brought here and they will leave after mission. It's a war feeling on that. a sense of annihilation of an empire. Um, it's a battle for supremacy. It's more than a bloodline. It's an entire population of an area in all times wiped out with no traces left behind. Okay, let's move further. And then I've got my secondary task to move of that life form and see what are its goals, what it's doing to accomplish these goals. And let's see, I've got artificial as words and my impression, creation, terraforming, coming down, traveling, moving, bringing order or reforming, preventing the process of destabilizing, disrupting, and an analytic overlay of universal laws of natural order or natural cycle. I've seen this spiraling type of like a perfect spiral as a normal path for a civilization or a life or a universe. I don't know for sure. It felt like a normal, beautiful spiral, and somewhere in the middle was a disrupting area. And disruption for me creates unbalance, and there is a sense of precision, but with acceptable errors and trials, pondering and adjusting. I had a sense of Babylon Tower or Noah's flood. Also, when I move again to these goals, I've seen a mathematical mind with huge enormous time spans long, with rules, universal rules to obey, to control, to bring back natural order was the only goals of these beings. It felt like the rules were mutual, unwritten, fundamental. I've got analytic overlays of emerald tablets like 10 commands or code of behavior, untouched by anything else but its orders, preventing further damages, restoring natural balance on a span of billions of years. And again, it came back to me as an AI and artificial intelligence. It seems that they were a third party, meaning that they came to restore things. It feels that it was a war between other two parties, which could end it in a more destructive way. These were a kind of lords sent by gods to rebalance the situation, to restore things to normal in a more or less damaging way. At least these are their statement and principle. These are super beings endowed with super abilities and attributes, fleshy type of beings with extraordinary knowledge and powerful abilities, physical strength, psychical abilities. They acted at first as negotiator between the parts of the war, never coming up with an agreement between those, which ended up in the options of wiping out all no emotion involved coming from them. So, yes, that was a presentation. Thank you, Darby, for the target. Really interesting one. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Welcome to my presentation on Darby's target. We worked coordinates 74578851, and the target turned out to be the primary cause or the primary causes of the Younger Dryas on Earth, approximately 12,900 to 11,700 years BP. I have worked 4 sessions on this target, but I am going to go through only quick snapshots of my work. If you are interested, I'm sure we are going to have all the sessions uploaded in an unabridged format. So let's get to the meat of it. In my very first session on this target on page 8, and later on you are going to find out why I'm not starting on page 1, but on page 8. On page 8, after retaking the coordinates, I am immediately getting the analytic overlay or the idea or the impression that the target has some similarity to the Tunguska event. and my main gestalts are space, air, motion, energy, and land. At the time I enter the target, I am perceiving first space air from a very high altitude, and I'm feeling very cold. And I am taking a mental note and I'm writing it down that I feel as if though I am looking at a continent from the edge of space. I am continuing my session with describing the motion energy component of the target, which I perceive as gray, gassy, dusty, disturbed, smoky, rippling outwards from the center in an axial format. I see this formation expanding outwards in a concentric fashion, and all this time I have an above point of view. So you can see that I am marking the edges of some landmass, and relative to that landmass, a huge area of that landmass is covered by this expanding concentric, gassy, dusty, energetic. And again, I'm taking a note. It feels like something has created like dust clouds over this area. On page 10, still continuing, I am also perceiving shaky and quaky motion, rumbling and roaring sounds, and I feel trembling. And I get the concept that it seems like there are waves of big dust traveling outwards from a central point, and suddenly my point of view of the target changes from an above point of view to ground level, and I am seeing plumes of smoky dust rising up in pillars, and I am also describing a lifting, pushing, throwing outwards motion which is impacting a land. The land I describe as hard, shardy, rocky, and flowed out by something. I am seeing a fractured, hollow land surface, and there is something leaking and escaping out of it. It's gassy, strong, pressurized, and it's ejecting upwards and outwards. It reminds me of like a strong gas leak. Again, I am back to space, and I'm noting everything that I'm seeing looks like space stuff and stellar things. And I am feeling enveloped in a floaty darkness. And you can see that I am describing a spherical, round, basically formation that is approached by speckles or smaller things in a linear fashion. And in a later session, I am describing drifting donuts. I don't know if you have seen race cars doing drifting donuts, but I'm getting the same visual impression. There is like this rotating, drifting, circling, gassy, dusty, cloudy formation that I'm picking up during these sessions. I was tasked in one of my sessions to move to something created dust clouds here and describe. I think you remember that I wrote it down here on page 9, something created dust clouds here. So Darby tasked me to move to that point, and I am again getting motion energy, which is rotating, scattering around. I am seeing it first from above and then from an aside point of view. It reminds me of a sprinkler. There is like a central source, and there is like this archy outward spewing sandy dusty motion going on. I am also taking a note that it looks like a sprinkler, but it's spraying sand and dust and not water mist. And from an above point of view, it seems like fast rotating, sprinkling aerotic motion, which is throwing things out in the air. So based on the things that I've shared so far, I would say that my data aligns most with one specific theory about what might have caused a Younger Dryas ice age, and that would be the Younger Dryas impact theory, because most of my data points align to that theory. You can look it up on Google. This is not the accepted mainstream theory explaining the small ice age during the Younger Dryas, and it's challenged by many scientists, but from a remote viewing data perspective, the data that I have gathered and the data that I have in my sessions align aligns with this theory the most. And why would that be? Because from the alternative theories, one of them is that it might have been a huge volcano eruption. And while some of my data points, like the plumes of dust clouds and the ejection of material, might be interpreted as a volcanic eruption, but I also have a lot of data points in my session that are pulling my attention to space. I was describing how I feel like I'm looking at a continent from the edge of outer space, and then later on I'm back in space and I'm seeing stellar objects floating in darkness. So considering this, I would say that my data is not aligned with a volcanic eruption scenario. My data is more aligned with something impacting a landmass and creating havoc, basically. So the way they describe how an impact might have caused the Younger Dryas ice age is they say that a passage of an asteroid or comet through the atmosphere created an excavation of crater and ballistic ejection of debris. And they say that there might have been also an expansion of conical ejecta curtain, and the ejecta had a re-entry through the atmosphere, and there were huge surface winds during the secondary impact and over a long time climate change. I have descriptions and sketches that align with this explanation. I have included a diagram which is showing that there is like an expanding ejecta curtain which is going outwards in a rippling format, and it's also going high up in the atmosphere. But what does Graham Hancock have to do with this? Well, that's a good question. One of the weird data points that I could not reconcile with was 3 seemingly archaeologists walking through what looks like an archaeological site. And that was basically like 2 pages of data showing that they were like exploring around and cataloging a site, and they were Caucasian white-skinned, and one of the main guys was light-haired with European features, wearing khaki and beige clothing. When I was doing the session, I was like, yeah, his face looks familiar, but I don't know who. I couldn't connect it anywhere. And then later on, Darby told us that one of the inspirations for tasking that specific target came from what he learned from Graham Hancock about this target. And it turns out that Graham Hancock is one of the proponents of the theory that an interstellar impact might have caused the Younger Dryas ice age.
This is a huge controversy in science at the moment. We know that there was enormous flooding 12,800 years ago. The question is what caused it? Why did it happen there? And there's a very powerful theory, which is now backed by more than 100 mainstream scientists, that the Earth passed through the debris stream of a disintegrating comet. And that theory is called the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. And those several bits of that disintegrating comet might have been pretty big, maybe up to 1 kilometer in diameter. And they landed on the North American ice cap, generating huge amounts of heat. Tremendous shock wave hits the ice cap, and it turns that ice into water, and it rushes down southwards, fills up these lakes, overflows these lakes, and tears up the landscape underneath it. And this Younger Dryas impact hypothesis is by far, in my view, the best explanation of what's going on.
Well, he says it was a comet that was disintegrating and it was hitting Earth. And if you look at my sketch, it is showing something similar to that. And also I have data which is showing a huge fiery impact. I am noting down motion energy that is red, orange, bright. It's either fire or the sun, but it's going in a horizontal or across direction. And at that point, or at the point in my session, all I'm seeing, my entire field of vision from left to right, is this red, orange, flaming backdrop, like everything is on fire. Also, I have data points that show that there seems to be several things that impacted, not only one. And I have a sketch where I'm showing actually 2 smaller looking, rounder things that are embedded in what looks like a crater inland. But besides these very logical data points, I also had some interesting aspects. I'm gonna share some of the more interesting aspects of my session, which point to the direction that yes, something impacted the Earth in several bits and pieces, but it might not have been meteor. My very first impressions involve land around a man-made, and I'm describing a land which is brown and plowed and disturbed and moisty, and there is an oblong man-made embedded in it, and a human being is pulling it out of a crater. I am getting location data as well, which is telling me that I am somewhere around the tundra. It's elevated, it's highland, it's distant, isolated. It is mainly rocky and grassy. There is no tall vegetation, just grass and rocks. There are marshy wetlands around, and there are steep canyons. I have this impression of a mechanically impacted or scooped, basically slanted scooped land, which was like torn or split, and a young male is descending or climbing down into this crevice. He's very curious and surprised, and he's rushing and running towards that something that he sees in that impacted lower crevice. I was curious as well what he's running towards. You can see in the middle sketch the kid is climbing down and running towards something, and his purpose or his goal is to recover or collect fallen objects. So when looking for what is it that impacted, I could hear squeaking metal sounds, and it was floating and everything was dark around, and that thing was a drift. It was large and metallic. It had like a paneled surface. It was empty, adrift and abandoned, and I described it knocking into or bumping into something and crackling and trembling, hitting, knocking or colliding with something, but that clearly is not a rock there. And I am describing that this hitting, knocking, collision happened accidentally, by chance. It was not a controlled thing. It was two path crossing.
Hey, I'm Naeem. I'm going to be going over some of my data for target 74578851. This is a project work with the Hellfire Remote Viewing Club. The target was the Younger Dryas. I'm going to share the tasking document here. Yeah, the primary cause of the Younger Dryas, approximately 12,900 to 11,700 years ago. The remote viewer described the primary cause or causes of the period of climatic change on Earth, commonly known as the Younger Dryas. So I'm just going to run through some of my highlights of my session here, and hopefully this is helpful information. So I'll start with this overview data. Target consists of life, people, and life, and a panic, a desperation to escape or flee. There's a collapse and detriments, and it feels like a wipeout event. I see structures crumble and break away, and this event is like the end of the world for the people, for the life in this time. There's concentric structures organized. There's a civilization that has amenities, shops, medical, basically fully functioning civilizations. Getting more towards the cause of what may have caused this event. I see a long trough or streak in the land, like something impacted and dragged and streaked across the land there, an impact event. Looking more into this impact event, I see multiple impacts streaked down from above. Smell of brimstone. So, the impression here is like doomsday. Things rain down from the heavens. Pain, yells, agony, scalding hot, boiling temperatures, So this is like hellfire rains down. And, seeing that, what came to mind was like, kind of like a meteor or asteroid impacts. So multiple impacts rain down. My next visual capture here was I see a group of life running away as there's like a huge wave, a tsunami, tidal wave that is trailing behind them. Deafening, thunderous sounds. Women, children, and common folk are running, yelling, trying to get out. They're doomed. Panic, tidal wave, tsunami, peril, many detriments. So, I see bodies strewn across the land. There's remains. And this is very much the end of the world, or, the end of their world. Doing some edging here to try and get a more intense visual contact. I saw this in a moving image. So hopefully, I illustrated this clearly. But what I wrote here is the flesh is burnt and vaporized almost instantaneously when this wave hits. I see the flesh just evaporate. So this is like a half flesh, half skeleton that I'm drawing here. And as this wave hits, I literally saw, anything that wasn't bone basically instantaneously vaporized, instantaneously evaporated, singed, like deep fried with terrific force and unbelievable heat. Anything living, biologic would have, not a chance of surviving this impact here. My next visual, I saw something that looks like what you'd see at the bottom of the sea or the ocean, on Google Maps, like a LiDAR scan or one of those types of scans that they use, like vague, indistinct shapes. This is my sense is this is what's left after the aftermath, like buried, um, lost in time, debris fields, like almost looks like the result of something nuclear, something melted. People would look at this and say, like, on the internet, you would see people looking at these type of scans and saying, there were structures there. So my sense is that they may be able to find some kind of remains or structures in association with this event, maybe in the future. Remains underwater, pyramids, structures lost in time in the sands of time, ancient civilization type vibes here. So I know, doing research since I've worked this project, I know that there's some theories that, go with the idea that there was advanced ancient civilizations on the earth prior to this time that may have been wiped out. So my data seems to support that idea. More into the more speculative, concepts here in terms of the life, aside from the cause. And this is looking more at like, well, is there any life there? Well, I saw people in robes doing something like a ritual. There's something etched in the ground, and they stand around the circumference. Some kind of transcommunication, like through the veil. Something Aleister Crowley would know about. Gregorian chants, single note humming. There may be some apparitions involved with this, a ritualistic summoning, chanting, and sorcery. These people seem to have been involved with. Some people may call this like satanic. So, some very occultic activity here. associated with the target. Looking closer at the life, people in robes, very ancient look, sorcerers, magicians, wise elders. Maybe people may consider these like demigods. And my sense is like some of these people could see the future, like had a precognition of what was to come, and some of them may have planned an escape or got to a safe area. I wrote like sorcerers of Atlantis. I saw I guess you would call it like a scepter, an ornate staff or rod, golden, precise crafting here, craftsmanship, gold, titanium, jewels, and rubies, a wand type device. And I get the sense this was used for like spell casting, you know, demon summoning type activity, wizardry. And it feels like a conductor. And I see like bolts of electricity and energy associated with it. Like it could be held in the air and possibly be used to materialize things. Here I see, it's kind of common. This is a bit of a common theme in some ancient, architecture and drawings. Image of the crossed arms with staffs and objects in the hand. And my sense is like they use something like this as a tool. And I get the word the coiled serpent. Like they may have been able to levitate or move things using these tools. The sense I got is like the power of God. They may have called that. So hopefully that was interesting. I've been reading more about the Younger Dryas. I'd read Hancock and similar authors in the past, many years ago. But working this blind, of course, kind of reintroducing me to the subject since. Um, I know that this my data seems to support the idea of the impact theory, which is controversial, I guess, on many accounts. Um, that's the theory that says that there may have been a comet that broke into multiple pieces, um, impacted many areas, bringing rapid, intense heat, melting North American ice caps and things like this, causing the sea level to rise, um, causing tsunamis up to 1,000 feet deep. So, I mean, my data seems to line up very, very closely with that concept. So, hopefully that was interesting, and thanks for watching.
I'm going back to explore something that feels man-made. It's inside land in some way, and it feels like this big, high, porous kind of land, and it's hollow and carved, but somehow it feels melted. And it's got this internal luminescence. It also feels as though there's some water. So I'm just getting up to the point of wanting to draw. I want to draw what I'm seeing inside. So I've got. I'm looking at so something below, and it's looking. I'm seeing it in my mind's eye. I've got these kind of building things. Whatever it is, it's very beautiful. It's very fine. It's very fine. It's like it's quite. It reminds me of corals. So that's what it looks like when you go in, and then let's see it like that somehow. And once you're inside, there's one level that's like a city. It's city-like, but it's curved. Or it's not like the cities we're looking at. They're all curved somehow. And further down, there's a very beautiful place which has got this pool of kind of luminescent blue water. So if we're going to look at the colors a bit, this color, it's like that. It's a bit darker than that, but it's got, it's darker blue. Maybe it's this blue. And it feels like quite a sacred place down here. So it actually feels as though there's art around here. It feels like statues, lamps, very beautiful things here around the pool. Pool's right at the bottom. There's a step. It's big, big this. And I think, I don't know, it feels as though you can go in right down. Let's see what else we can get here. I'm going to go down to this floor here. So this drawing on page 3. Curved. So these they're structures, and they feel very organic. And they're somehow, they have, it's like land, rock made of moss. So it's rocky and mossy. It actually, it feels that the texture, it feels alive. It's an extraordinary feeling, and it's brown. It's brown and it's got this luminescence. It feels illuminated. Now I'd really like to draw what that looks like. And it's almost as though there's shafts of light coming down, and the buildings. It reminds me a bit of Petra, but it's within somehow. So funny. This feels like a covered avenue, almost like as though this was like a piazza with market stalls. There's this. So we're looking at almost a shaft of light coming down here and illuminating. And then we're looking at these structures that are really brown. It has a feel of like adobe, the texture, but it feels soft to the touch. It's really nice, the material. And this is just a detail. And there do seem to be, lots of smaller structures in here. And this is colored pretty. It's funny to think of like a shade cloth effect but so that's one level, is the light coming through, and there's more over here as well. And again, there do seem to be little little spaces that it's not just buildings all crammed together. It definitely has spaces in between. It feels quite of social feeling. I don't want to carry on for too long, so I'm going to go. There's bigger buildings here, and it's got a funny roof detail like that, like a covering. Yeah, maybe like that. Perspective's a bit funny, but there. It's a strange slanting. Can't work out why, but and something coming out there. I'm going to go back down now to the pool, maybe. So for the pool, it feels as though it's definitely a different level, and I am seeing like a staircase almost to come down. So what I want to do with the pool is I want to go there and look towards it so that I'm here, and so I can see the art better. I really like that. And there's the pool there, and this is closed here. This is curved, closed, it's darker. So here we go. There, but it's it's not. It doesn't feel bad that it's dark because this pool itself has. It feels as though it's got like illumination, and I don't know. It this it you go down into it, and it's almost as though you can go down to another level through the pool. So it's like, I don't know, you can have a level here that you can stand on. So here it feels quite deep, and I can't work out, there's a mechanism here, some kind of mechanism. And you go down by degrees, but this is just an area that you can stand on. And the art, that's what I really wanted. They look it almost has a lion face here. It feels like a an eagle looking lion. That's not very good. Let's have a try the wings up there and the lion looking face. It doesn't particularly satisfy me, but and they feel like they're on columns, and it almost feels like crystal.
Dennis Nappy II here with the Hellfire Remote Viewing Club. I'm going to go over my data here from Darby's target. That was 74578851. We were tasked to look at what caused the Younger Dryas period. Forgive me, it was a primary cause of the Younger Dryas period. My data doesn't have a lot of causality. I'll talk more about what I think it all means. It's more, I think, a survivor story. So it's possibly relevant, but speaking to the tasking, I don't see a lot of data. Maybe once the analysis comes through, there is. I don't see a lot of causation data, but maybe using the vision of work, all of us are connected and we all have a different piece of the story. That's my hope, that I'm not just on some random imaginary story here. All right, let's take a look at what I brought back here. That was our tasking there. Okay. All right, here's my first session, low-level data. I'm just going to go over what I feel is relevant here. I highlighted some things. Right away, something happens. Life elevates the event, but then life rises above it. And right away, I had floating on the floodwaters like Noah. So maybe something happened like that. There was a second life, Life 2 hooks or attempts to hook Life 1 and bring them back to the ground, to give notice, short notice, to make aware. There is an ascendant or growth, spiritual growth, and remorse. An AOL of a shaman. Life 1 was stern and serious, ignorant. He was male, alive, small-minded, meaning ignorant. And Life 2 was a woman, female, beautiful, temperament, calm, self-aware, and she was intuitive. And then I had a third life that was intelligent and elongated and had an AOL of a spaceship. Are things getting weird here? Quite possibly. I had a central authority figure, a structure, a life, an event centralized around something. It was complex and complicated. It was intelligent. It was expanding outward, but there was a central core that runs through it all. Elongated like a spire. I had an AOL of Atlantis circles. And here's my brief sketch here of what that looked like, the spike with the signal coming out. I felt that spike was occupied. And then there was this dome that was created, this energetic dome that was created for the purpose of protection, like layers of energetic rings coming down from a central beacon. Was it electromagnetic? Was it plasma? It had a feel to it, a physical sensation when you touched it, a buoyancy and a reflection, and also a repulsion. Depending on the force exerted would dictate the force returned. It matched your force, and there was blue energy at points of contact with it. And I described it as a force field. There was some kind of communication happening, and I wrote non-human communication. It was a language. It was bug-like. It sounded like friction and scurrying. It was encrypted. It sounded more like noise. Something was hidden and kept secret, but someone knew. The locals, the indigenous, and it's in their stories. I wonder if that's the stories that have survived and through the creation myths today. Again, just another sketch of the spire and the dome over it. This energy is defensive. It keeps things hidden, yet also acts as a beacon or guide to draw others in. It pulsed outwards and off-world. There was communications, a beacon of hope. Something happens above the planetoid or a planet structure. It was beamed into space, into a 0 point. Energy then transcends in all directions. AOL of home. The beacon was saying, "Come find us. We are hidden. We are many." It was a frequency-based communication, technologically advanced and superior, a code or message embedded in the frequency, oscillating. The way a frequency oscillates or vibrates can hold a message to be decoded or embedded in the heart centers, creating an inner sense of knowing, communication packet that delivers what is needed on an intuitive level. Okay, so with this session, again, survival, it sounds like something happened. There was technology involved and survivors calling out, seems into space for help. Come find us. Moving on to my second session here, I had an object that was rotating and spinning, and it was spinning and dizzying, and it might have been tied to the mind. Just some more data describing that here. Something with charged energetics that was spiking or off-gassing. There was radiation. There was a life, walking, shell-shocked, shaky. It was painful inside. It was painful in the bones, as if this life had been electrocuted, had gone through something. More energetics up and down and ebb and flow. The life was part of something. He lifted away from it, trying to move away, but was connected. There was some kind of mechanism of entanglement. I saw a vehicle moving through a hard tunnel structure. Then there was energetics impacting the body and human life. It was sustained. It was a draining feeling. Now, this is my self-task was, or my movement was to describe what was most important. So some kind of energetic that impacted the body. He felt fatigue and exhaustion. He was asking himself, can I do this? Can I achieve this? And then there was a discovery, a notion of discovery and exploring the unknown. And this, again, is where it gets into what feels like a survivor story here. I had an AOL of Robinson Crusoe on Mars, if you remember the old movies. And he finds this hardened structure, do not enter, danger. And he's wondering, should I go in? And has a moment of courage. His pride and ego came into play. And then he realized, What can I discover? Moving inside the structure, he was surprised. There was something technological inside. There were machines and lights and electronics as he was exploring. There was a large bay door that descended downward and was closed. Looking at the primary life, there was something tied to the species. It was species-wide and present. He felt lost and alone. It was like making a major discovery alone, wandering into something unexpected. Am I alone, he wondered? Is this abandoned, or will they return? A similar feeling to Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Felt like an old science fiction movie. And then it gets weird, and I had data that's similar to an abduction, which I'm not going to go too deep into because it doesn't really speak to the tasking. I will comment on this drawing here, this onlooker, possibly mecha or mechanical offspring, I labeled it. And just a side note, I know that there's stories, I think, of the Hopi who survived a cataclysm, and they say they survived with the ant people. So maybe that's the survival story I'm piecing together, but we're not going to go through all of this data. It is interesting, though. And that's session 2, and I had, again, another being with large, wide eyes. All right. I did a third and final session on this one. Again, just trying to focus on the data that might be relevant to the tasking. I had this object here. Again, something that was space or spaceborne. It was spinning, had rotational energy, was shiny and tube-like. Here's a cross-section of it, like a pipe on the inside, shiny silver markings, scratches on the inside. Was it I labeled it forward movement, projection, or a projectile. Stay the course. I had the word worship, and then I said, no, maybe it's warship. What was the functionality? Describe it. To move for a purpose, to confuse and make seen, a hindrance to the unknown, amplified, an amplification of signals so they can chart the way home. There was a spiritual and esoteric feeling here. Okay, what's most important about this? They were doing it for a reason. This was intentional, whatever it was. Describing the reason, order, a movement order to gain functionality, an operation or justification. But functionality of what? A moratorium of mind embodied, of spirit, a purpose to enact change, hardship, I asked, to bring about an outcome. This was the movement I was given by Darby, looking at the floating on floodwaters data point I had. I gathered more information on that, and I had this male life with a beard in his 40s or 50s floating akin to an AOL of Castaway or Moses. This is interesting. You can see it in his eyes, a calm confidence, the look one only gets from knowledge gained from experience, as if this man had gone through something and he had that wisdom that only a survivor can attain. Had this satellite object up in the sky, metallic, but it was hollow. Something tied into search and locate or reconnaissance, an AOL of destroy, a manifest destiny, our God-given right, determination of outcome. It was a purpose, a done for a purpose. And then I had this life, arrogant, something about knowledge. He knows it's him. He knows what's coming. There was panic in the desert. An AOL of an escape pod or a means of escape, flee, run. Life was in a circular structure. He's confident as if he knows a secret nobody else knows. There may be a consequence for those in ignorance, but he stays smugly put, maybe looking down on them. An AOL of a rescue. There was rumbling and movement and upward trajectory. Looking at functionality. A trip around the sun, riding a planet wave through its orbit for a purpose or reason. A plan. There is a plan enacted for ages. To be blessed with gifts of knowledge. I had this image of just an old wise man. There was learning as a function of knowledge, the journey and the experience, illumination of thought, insight into one's own mind through shared common experience of trials and tribulations, hardships in common, the chosen one to fulfill a mission or journey, an important task, the task at hand, the task to be completed so that he may be fulfilled. It lives in him now, knowledge and power bestowed upon thee so we may live again. It is the journey, the tribulation, the hardship that brings the gift of knowledge. So there's my 3 sessions. I'm not sure if I'm on target at all, but we have no way of really verifying that. I'd like to see how it corroborates with other viewers' data. But what I think, based on my quick analysis of what my sessions are, there are survivors, and it seems like there was a higher intelligence that was airborne or spaceborne that sent a projectile or some kind of signal down to Earth. There was a group of survivors that sent a beacon outwards off planet, reminding whoever's out there to come rescue them. And I had a tale of just someone trying to survive and finding, I think, remnants of whatever was left of a civilization. Fascinating session. I enjoyed doing it. Am I on target? That's up for all of you to decide. Thanks for watching.
Hi everybody, Don DeCurcell here in New Jersey, USA. This is my session analysis for target 7457-8851. I did 4 sessions for this target, which is a lot of data, so I'll be going over session highlights here today. And for those interested, the individual pages of all 4 of my sessions will be available online. The target statement is: the remote viewer will describe the primary cause or causes of the period of climatic change on Earth, commonly known as the Younger Dryas. Okay, this is a climatology target. And to make sure we're all on the same page, I'll briefly review what the established information sources say about it. The Younger Dryas was a cool period roughly between 12,900 to 11,600 BCE, which disrupted the warming temperatures in the northern hemisphere. It produced cooler temperatures that returned parts of Europe and North America to an ice age that lasted approximately 1,300 years. After that, a rapid warming followed. The Younger Dryas was preceded by a sudden warming interval, beginning around 14,700 years ago. This may be the chief contributor to the present hypothetical explanation that the Younger Dryas was caused by meltwater flowing from the heated ice sheets covering much of North America flowing into the Atlantic Ocean. This drainage disrupted the warm currents that heated the globe. Now, other theories for the Younger Dryas suggest volcanic eruptions, or perhaps a large comet was involved. And this is where we start to see some similarity with my first 2 remote viewing sessions. My session summaries give the best overview of this correspondence, and I'll be going over them in a bit, but I'd like to go over a few observational highlights first. I consider every remote viewing session an experiment, and I'm always looking for how my subconscious is communicating, because I want to learn how it talks. I don't consider my session data just data. It's more like something I need to study to understand what it's trying to say and the techniques it uses to say it. During my analysis, I noticed, first of all, an increased number of split ideograms, and here's one. Now, I rarely get these, yet if you've had any remote viewing training, you'll realize the gaps in your pen marks are actually significant. And here's another one. And let's go over this one in detail. The first part here I perceived as a sweeping, curving motion that was traveling and had to overcome some sort of impasse. If we're talking about an interstellar object here, I wonder if the impasse might be the Earth's atmospheric layer. The second part seemed to continue on this theme with the sweeping traveling motion, now cited as coming here emphatically. This sounds like this could be some sort of interstellar object, and the word emphatically hints at some sort of damaging or forceful result. The third part, the gap here, I perceived as a transition, which I now started to feel was the main subject, the primary gestalt. Interesting if you think about it. I declared a break in my ideogram as a primary gestalt. Earlier in my session, I described this further as a space-time transition, something that was affecting both space and time. From what the literature tells us, the Younger Dryas affected physical space in terms of ice sheet meltwater in the Atlantic, and forming another ice age that lasted 1,300 years. So it did indeed affect both space and time. And if you think about it, it's not clear the people of that era understood what was causing their change in the weather. So for them, the rapid flooding and ice age may have seemed mysterious. They didn't have the information we have today, so before our time, the reasons for the Younger Dryas were mostly hidden. Now, later, as I was analyzing this session, I couldn't help but notice the similarity between this ideogram and the Younger Dryas temperature chart I showed earlier. Notice how they both initially curve upward, reach a peak, then descend and bottom out during a space of time, followed by a rapid temperature recovery. Look at how my subconscious conveyed this information, this 1,300-year interval. I got data, let's call it through a mental channel, the words I wrote down in my session, and the ideogram, the visual similarity to the Younger Dryas temperature chart in the encyclopedias, a scribble that came through my nervous system, I guess. Two different information channels. Interesting. One last thing about this ideogram. This wasn't just an ideogram done in sequence. It was an answer to a specific question. This question, you see, earlier in my session I got this ideogram, and that element there labeled complicated. I didn't understand it. So I asked, what is that? What does it mean? And I got this. It just goes to show you how dense the data can be in a single ideogram. In this case, I needed another one to explain a small detail in the first ideogram. And I think that's pretty educational. Now, I mentioned going over my first two session summaries and the data that contributed to them. Let's get on to that now. Session A, Major Aspects. Descriptions that sound like a meeting or an encounter with something in the air. Aerial views, looking down, smooth, gliding, exhilaration, following ad hoc procedures. followed by a transition, a jolting, lurching forward, fast and deliberate, up and away. An isolated incident, prestigious, multiple onlookers, military and intelligence involvement. People working in a confined space. Feelings of anxiety, nervous tension, overly bureaucratic. A rigmarole and playing it cool. An unknown object. Symmetrical aspects, smooth and shiny. Fast movements together with motionless moments. This was a kind of demonstration. Communication going on. A base surface. This was not clear, sometimes out in the open like a desert or with wood buildings, and other times out on the water. Secrecy, initial secret, and then some information released to the public. And here's my summary for the second session. Something streaking across the sky. Observed by eye. Unknown methodology. Described as orthotropic. Let me inject a few words here. I heard the word orthotropic here. Okay, who knows what that word means? Raise your hands. When I hear stuff in my subconscious like that, my mind first questions it, like, is orthotropic even a word? And then you wonder how to even spell it. I wrote orthotropic, and phonetically that's pretty close to orthotropic. And I immediately pulled the definition off of my cell phone and wrote it in session. It means having elastic properties in 2 or 3 perpendicular planes. Now, what does that mean? I went into my 3D modeler to explore the idea. Here's one dimension, and then a second, and finally a third. Now, if I oscillate that elastically, it starts looking to me like a comet or something disintegrating in the atmosphere. Well, that's my take anyway. Sorry for the interruption. Back to my summary review. Patrolling. Uniformed personnel. Reactions. Panic. Chaos. Danger. Alarms. Procedural concerns. What to do next? hands moving quickly back and forth across control panels. People pacing back and forth in confined room space. Base surface again varies, both a dry sandy surface and at other times a naval vessel. So it seems these two sessions had strong perceptions of some sort of aerial phenomenon. A crash was mentioned, a phenomenon that affected both space and time and caused people to experience high anxiety and procedural concerns on both land and sea. I also discovered a few interesting items in my remote viewing work, like the ideogram that looked like the Younger Dryas temperature chart, and hearing the words orthotropic and effervescent in my subconscious as descriptions for that aerial phenomenon. One last observation. There were a number of higher technology-oriented perceptions in my sessions. Technology higher than one might expect for 14,000 years ago. People waving their hands near control panels, naval vessels, control rooms, and even one thing that looked like an ET. Whether these things were real at the time will likely never be known, and may have just been metaphors for devices of that era. But if you believe extraterrestrials were inhabiting Earth during this period, they may have been just as inconvenienced as anyone else, wondering what to do, packing and moving elsewhere, especially if there was flooding going on. So there it is. There's a quick summary of my sessions. Thank you for watching.
All right, a great job from all of our viewers who recorded these video presentations summarizing their data. Before we wrap up this video, I wanted to share with you my thoughts as the project's tasker and manager as to what I think our viewers' data says about what caused the Younger Dryas. So when I look at the data from our viewers that's in agreement, I would have to say that our data most closely supports a cause like the comet impact hypothesis, which is a theory favored by some scientists and researchers, including Graham Hancock as the most likely cause of the Younger Dryas. Now, looking at our data, I wouldn't say that I think it was a comet specifically, or at least not just a comet that was the cause of the Younger Dryas. When we look at our data, data from our viewers as a whole, it seems as though there is also a man-made object of stellar origin and/or moving energetics, possibly directed by some type of non-human intelligence that is also clearly related to this destruction of a civilization, which shows up in our data, which seems to be related in our viewers' data to the Younger Dryas. So a lot of amazing sessions, a lot of amazing data. I want to give big thanks to all of the viewers that participated in this project. And now it's your turn. We want to hear from you about what you think about the data our viewers produced. If you have any of your own conclusions, please share those. And if you have any questions for us, we'd love to hear your questions as well. It's our intention to record a follow-up roundtable video where we look at some of your comments and questions and discuss some of those on the air. So until then, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.